Hello and good morning, everybody. What is up and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, and today we're going to be discussing the Rainbow murders, or what is called the Paturis Park murders. But first, I'm going to try something a little differently. There's a lot of strange oddities happening in the news right now about like Jack Untwanger and how he was actually leading a double life as a serial killer. I find that very interesting. What do you think? Also, there's the Murdoch case. They finally just finished that, kind of, I guess. Well, he was sentenced. It's not really finished. There's a lot of outrage about where he's going in South Carolina, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, a lot of weird things that are happening in the true crime world right now. Like there's a 14-year-old that's been missing for about 3 months. They found in a river, and this was in Schenectady, New York. Yeah, very, very, very strange. Like, very strange. Oh, there's a documentary coming out about Dominique Olivier. I think that's her name. Oh, Monique Olivier. That's her name. Because she helped her husband abduct and rape and murder quite a few women. I actually had them on my list for Valentine's crimes. Let's see if I can find their names for you. That way I can give it a little background. Yeah, they were the first couple that I did. Michelle Fournet. I'll put their names on the bottom of the screen. But basically, they lived in France and in Belgium, and they would take their creeper van and go pick up unsuspecting girls and rape them and kill them. She also had a baby by him, too. And when she was pregnant, she still helped him. It's a very, very bizarre case, but there's a whole lot of weird happening in the true crime world right now, and it's like, what is going on? Also, that's how I feel about this same case too. Like, what is going on? And the reason I say this is because there's not a lot of information. Holy shit, that Reddit rabbit hole is crazy. And who they have as their prime suspect is somebody that you expect to keep people safe, which this has a common denominator with the Jeff Davis 8, which will be a future video that I cover. Anywho, yeah, so we are going to Brazil today. We are going specifically to Paturis Park, or Park.Dos Paturis, which is in Carapicuíba, Brazil. And this span of crimes lasted from 2007 to 2008. And there's about 13 victims. The sad part about this is that I've only been able to find two names of these victims, which sucks, because you really want all of these victims to finally get the notoriety that they deserve for being a victim of the Paturis Park murders. But there's a lot of cover-up, if you will. And I'm not dogging Brazil. I know there's a lot of things wrong all over the country, but man, it's just sad. It's one of those things that you don't imagine would happen, but is happening at the same time. So basically, this is still an unidentified serial killer. And the reason why I say this is still is because there was a suspect, he was arrested, but I'll get into that in a little bit. So these killings took place between February of 2007 and August of 2008 in the Paturis Park area. There was one that died at a hotel, but has been linked to this case. Anywho, so 12 of our 13 victims were male, and one was a transsexual. And all of them were between the ages of 20 to 40. The cause of death for all of these victims were either being shot in the head. Like, the 12 of them were shot in the head, but one of them died due to blunt force trauma. So normally speaking, with serial killings, one death is different, and that's normally because it's the first death. But this, because I haven't been able to find the names of these victims and actual dates of these victims, that's another problem. because of the whole cover-up conspiracy, I've only been able to find 2. There's no way to know if the first victim that is named is actually the first victim. They consider him the first victim, but we don't know, because typically speaking, when you're a serial killer, your first victim you have has a different cause of death than the rest of them, because there's a kind of a sense of an underkill and an overkill at the same time, because they don't fully know their strength, they don't fully know exactly how they should kill them, and they don't fully know, like, shit, did I really do it? Are they dead? Did I fully take away their life? And then once they move on from that first victim, there's a period of time between them. And then what happens between the period of time is that ache, that want. I talked about it in the Redhead Murders, the conclusion to the Redhead Murders, and my thoughts about it. But there's that inkling of wanting to take your next victim, and it eats at you and eats at you and eats at you until it builds up, and then you have to strike again. And then that tank that you just filled is going to deplete in half the time that it did the first time. And then it's a never-ending cycle. The only time this is hindered, really, is if there's something that happens with your serial killer. If they're arrested, if they're indisposed, they're in a different state. But even if they're in a different state, they're going to try and kill again. Like John Joseph Joubert from Maine. He did the same thing. He was in Maine. He struck in Maine, Connecticut, and in New York. And he is a tri-state killer. Not even being outside of the state would stop him from doing what he wanted to do, which was taking a life. So I know that was a bit off topic, but still relatively resourceful when it comes to talking about cases like this, is because a lot of people don't realize why there is certain breaks in between victims, why there is certain, like, why MOs are a specific way. And I know it makes me sound like really weird talking about stuff like this. It's just, I like to read, and it keeps my brain busy reading. Pretty sure I suffer from ADHD, and I've gone almost 32 years without knowing I have ADHD, which is fine. I just am very good at keeping my brain busy, and reading and learning about certain things keeps my brain busy. So, with that being said, like I was mentioning, all but one died via being shot in the head, and the other one died from blunt force trauma. So the gun that was used actually was determined to be a .38 caliber pistol, which would match our prime suspect. Let's kind of talk about the prime suspect first. So on the 10th of December of 2008, so same year that these killings stopped, because the span was 2007 to 2008, police arrest a retired state police sergeant. Interesting, right? Interesting. So this man, his name is Jairo Francisco Franco, and he has been considered the prime suspect since they started investigating this case. I do investigating very loosely. And one of the main reasons why he was arrested is because there is an eyewitness account that said he saw him shoot an African-American male 12 times because he was gay. Me, outsider looking in, hey, that's a hate crime. That's a murder, but stemmed by a hate crime. But in Brazil, it's not technically considered a hate crime. There are activist groups that keep tabs on all of these crimes. That way, they can make sure that the police and the government down there are not trying to cover up any homophobic crimes or any homophobic motives behind these crimes. That way, no data is being screwed up. That way, they can see exactly who dies and who doesn't. And it's the same thing in regards to this case, is because they either have the information and they're not releasing it publicly, or they're not able to because a lot of that information is gone, unfortunately. So, with Jairo Franco being in custody, they believe that his ultimate motive behind these murders is because he needed to eradicate the area from all these gay men and from a transsexual. I will say they did have another suspect who they believed killed these people, in similar fashion as to how they killed about 6 transvestites in the 90s. But this person, they can't definitively say whether or not it's him or not. This person has a military background, and nothing about this person's identity has been released in any tangible piece of information that I've been able to find, just that it's suspect 2. Another reason why they believe that it's him or it's them is because they also used a .38 caliber pistol, which also, again, haven't been able to find the initial, suspect 2 killings, because you think that, as they dub him a travesty killer of 6 transvestites, you think that you'd be able to find this information readily available. Oh no, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. So let's kind of go back to the first victim that Jairo Franco is suspected of killing. So on July 4th of 2007, this is when 32-year-old Jose Cicero Henrique would be found. So he was shot in the head and his pants were found around his knees in a very suggestive way. And he is considered our first victim. We don't know specifically if he is our first victim, but he is considered the first victim. So with his pants around his knees, it kind of gives or lends to the fact that this is a sexually motivated crime. So Paturis Park is a kind of a place where people get together and kind of do things together. There's another case I have where it's unsolved, where I'm waiting until Pride Month to do. I've had this case researched since last year, and I was going to cover it last year, but I didn't feel it was right, and I'm going to cover it this year for Pride Month. I wanted to save this for Pride Month as well, but I felt that it was important to talk about this now, because there's a lot of people that have no idea about this case. My initial, investigating into this case, which there's not a lot of transcription about this, obviously, first place you're going to look is YouTube. See if there's other videos that people have done about this. And there's not. There's little things here and there, smaller YouTube channels, like myself. I'm a smaller YouTube channel or a smaller podcasting channel. But people deserve to know about this case. Our victims deserve to have their names recognized for them unfortunately losing their lives. And it's my hope, talking about this, that it educates those further about, hey, it's not just the United States that's messed up. It's other places in the world, like when I covered Muhammad Ijaz, when I covered Colin Ireland, the grinder killer, the grinder poisoner. When I covered all of those cases during Pride Month last year, I want people to understand that this happens all over the world. It's not just a United States thing. There are serial killings all over the world, and this is no exception to any of this. So the death of Jose Henrique really kind of tried to kickstart the investigation into this. I did read a lot where there was a lot of dilly-dally with the investigators on the case and the detectives, which kind of sucks. Because as things transgress, as things transpire, a lot of things go cold, a lot of things cannot be held viable because they're not as viable as they once were. And I feel that that's a common denominator with this case, is that there's not a lot that they could salvage because of how much time had transpired, and there wasn't the right people investigating it. So our last victim is our victim that was found in the motel. This was on December 2nd of 2008. So this victim, I'm going to call her by her name that she wanted to go by. Her name was Pamela. She was 27 years old, and she was a transsexual. But she identified as Pamela, so I'm going to call her Pamela, not by her birth name. So Pamela was found dead in a motel via a gunshot wound to the head. So the articles that surround her death, they were published on December 2nd of 2008, and it states that the suspect number 1 had checked into the motel. So suspect number 1 is a retired sergeant. That is Jairo Franco. So Jairo Franco checked into the motel with Pamela. Interesting, right? Interesting. It also stated that Pamela was shot about 12 times. A little bit of overkill. So I did read that it is possible that maybe Pamela was an informant for the police. It is possible, and that is why she was brought to the motel, is because they were going to have a conversation about what she had seen. And maybe Franco, now I'm just speculating, this is not set in stone, this is not what actually happened. maybe he decided to rid her. That way he could just tie up the loose ends. He didn't have to worry about her anymore. She did her job. Now I'm going to get rid of her. Seeing as how he had been seen shooting an African-American male that was gay a total of 12 times. What are your thoughts on this case? I find it absolutely bizarre that we don't have a lot more information when it comes to this case. But that, my friends, is the Paturis Park murders, or as it also is known as the Rainbow Maniac. I hope you guys learned something from this case. If not, I apologize if it left you wondering for more. It is a deep dive into that rabbit hole, into Reddit. So whatever tickles your fancy, go ahead and do so. But that, my friends, is the Rainbow Maniac and Crimes Untold with Liz, and I will see you guys in my next one.